Okay, my name is Dave Miller, age 47. Today's date is October 2nd, 2015. We are in Sacramento, California, and I am interviewing my mother, Judy.
Okay, that would be Judy Miller-Barron, age 74, and I am David's mother. And it is October 2nd, 2015, and we are in Sacramento in a lovely Airstream trailer.
Okay, well, Mom, thank you for doing this and coming up today from the Bay Area. And I know you were nervous about doing this, but this is my way of um, honoring you in many ways and talking about many things. I was somewhat motivated by actually NPR story that I listened to by an author, William Zinzer, who wrote a book. I think it was called On Writing Well. But he talked about, and he recently just passed away. I think he was in his 90s. But he talked about the importance of recording and actually interviewing family members uh, and documenting that and getting that on record. And he talked about his regrets of not doing that with certain people in his life. So that really hit home. I've actually been thinking about doing this for a long time, but that really was when I heard that interview that made me think about doing this. Um, um, so anyway, let's go to my first question. Mom, can you tell me about your early life and where you grew up and how you grew up?
Well, I grew up in Chicago. I was, it's interesting because I was born at West Suburban Hospital in Oak Park, Illinois. And later in my life at 17, I entered nurses training at the same hospital. And I
Oh.
happen to remember my mother always saying, Dr. Trowbridge was a surgeon and he was, you know, really great. And I was the last baby he delivered because he went on to a surgery career. Anyway, he was still at the hospital when I was in training. I'm kind of diverting here
Mm-hmm.
about my early years, but this is probably the time to tell it because it's a funny story. So, part of my nurses training, which was terrific at that time, in the this would be like in 62 or 61. Anyway, I'm in my surgery rotation, and we did it, we were the scrub nurses and we were the instrument nurses. And I was doing a surgery one day with Dr. Trowbridge. And but I had never confronted him that, he had delivered me. And so we came out of the surgery room one day and my contact popped out, hard ones, and they just go pop. So he gets down on the floor in the hallway outside the surgery room, and we're all patting the ground. And as we're down there, I turn my head and I say, Dr. Trowbridge, you delivered me, and I was one of the last babies you delivered.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't impress him that much, but
Mm-hmm.
we did find the contact. So anyway, back to my growing up in Chicago. It was quite different than my lifestyle now. It was like in the city. Is that what you wanted to?
Well, where were you born?
Well, I was born in Oak Park Hospital, West Suburban
Okay,
Hospital, where I ended up
right.
going to training. But then we lived in the city at that time,
Okay.
and some of my, you know, earlier early memories were like going to the park, the usual things with my mother. And I do remember going flying with my dad, and we'd come home from the airport. So I figure I had to be pretty tiny because he loved to drink milk. So we'd be in the kitchen, and we'd come home and he'd pour milk for both of us. And the counter, I remember, came up about eye level
Hmm.
to me. And he was tall. And
What was your first memory of your father?
my first memory of my father. Well, I guess it was. it was in that first apartment that we lived in, and he was. I don't think this is bad to say about your dad, but he was a workaholic. He got a locomotive certificate. He had a car garage. He had a Piper Cub airplane, and he drove a trolley. He was always doing something, and he used to come home from when he had the trolley job with those money changers. And I remember looking forward to him to coming home because he would let me play with those, where you put the change in, and then you might not have even seen one of those. I'm getting to the age where I realize that I talk about things that
Yeah.
you might not have known.
No, I think I do remember actually seeing those. I think like the vendors at the baseball games. Now that would have been in the 70s, maybe early 80s. Would have those big silver change makers, and they would, I do remember those. So, and so your dad was a pilot?
Yeah, he was. He had a Piper Cub, and he had it with somebody else, and he restored it. And then actually, it's just kind of sad, but his partner one day flew into a wire. And, well, first, his partner, after my dad restored the plane originally, it was all done, the final coat of paint on, and there was a huge light bulb in the hangar, and he told his partner, be sure to turn that light off before you leave, and he didn't, and it burnt up. He went down, he redid it, again, and then not long after that, his partner Barney flew into wire. And my mother tells me that as soon as he got the call, he went right down to the airport and got in a plane and took off. I guess the notion is that if you don't do that, you might just not fly or whatever. You fall off the horse and you get back on. So he did restore it again. And unfortunately, my mother and father didn't stay together. So, and then my father died when I was 10. So it's one of those things you never get to know what your relationship would be, adult to adult. And so there's a big chunk of nothing in terms of my relationship with my father, but I do have fond memories, and I probably made him into a bit of a hero because of the flying and that. And I used to make model airplanes and and all of that.
And then you spent your working life as a nurse, and then you retired and you became a pilot yourself.
I know. I wondered about that. It was like, gee, my dad was a pilot. Wouldn't he like to see me be a pilot too, type of thing. But I really didn't pursue it until I retired, and then Ben retired, and his son, Craig, was taking some flying lessons, and then Craig said to his dad, because it turns out Ben has always been infatuated with airplanes.
Who's Ben?
And Ben is my husband. We've been married for nearly 25 years now. So I was fortunate to have two great husbands, your father, Bryce, and Ben. So we've been married about the same amount of time. I've been married to Bryce and Ben. And, of course, Bryce passed away, and everybody misses him. Ben has been great. And as far as and actually, your father was interested. We had like the same interests, like the sailing and the boats, and turned out that he was very interested in flying too, in airplanes. I hadn't known that. So, so here's how I got to end up being a pilot. Craig encouraged Ben, Dad, you're not too old. Just go out there and take a lesson. So he did, and then I went with him a couple of times in the back seat. And I'm listening to everything. And after about the third time I went with him, I said, I think I could do this. It's funny because when I flew in the Piper Cub in the back seat with my dad, there was no radio stuff. It was just him talking and, trying to, and moving the stick and all of that. But when I went with Ben, it's like a lot of radio stuff. And I wasn't exactly enamored with it because I thought, I thought you just took off, went up there and buzzed around, in the clouds and all. But and the radio I thought, oh, I'll never remember to say all of that. But then I realized they were saying about the same stuff all the time. So I did try to take lessons. And then I said, hey, you know what? I don't have to get a license. I'm just enjoying this, the challenge of it. And then later I joined this women's group called the 99s. It was formed by Amelia Earhart. And I felt really enamored with all of that. I was just felt so privileged to be able to do this because, you know, I had retirement. Actually, started just before retirement, flying around. And so that I wasn't intending to get a license. And then somebody said, you could get your license. Because here I am in my 60s, And I thought, you're not supposed to be doing this stuff when you're retired and you're older. But I studied, did the written test, blah, 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 and here I am. And I'm still loving it.
Do you ever, I think I've been up with you a couple times. Do you ever wish that, we would fly with you more, or do you ever feel like, we should go fly with you more?
Well, you know what? I think I leave that up to you guys,
Yeah.
And I understand when you have children and the responsibility of that because there are risks,
Yeah.
There are no guarantees. But, yeah, I can understand that. That time I went in the river raft thing and went overboard and got sucked under and all the water, I didn't know up from down. It's the first thing I thought of. I said, mother of two dies in river raft accident. And I was like in a Montgomery Ward's raft in the American River. And I thought, am I stupid or what? Like leaving two children without a mother or something. So I get it if, people have cautions.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, of course, Emily will be, she'll be able to make her own decisions pretty soon.
Emily is my daughter. And
Yeah.
She's 16.
Yeah.
And we are going through a rough time with Emily right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I had rough times too as a teenager. And with Dad and you divorcing and Ben coming into the picture, I was looking back now, very mean. But what do you remember about that, and how did you? My memory of that is how you didn't approve of what I was doing, but you stood by me to
Yes. Yes. That's something that happens between a mother and her children. I don't think it's not because you're a great person, it's because that's the way it is with kids, and you probably know that. And I know you're talking about when you were at the end of high school there, and your dad and I had pretty much decided that we were going to split up. And we made some promises that we wouldn't do that until you had graduated. but I know it was really hard for you. And so, yes, I understood that, especially when Ben came in the picture.
Right.
And, you know, it all worked out because I had to kind of tell Ben to step back because if we, my first priority was my children, and you were the only one at home at that time. So, if I had a choice, I would, if anybody was going to pressure me, my choice would be for
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Yeah.
And it all worked out because I think now you and Ben he's been a very good, supportive person. I mean, I hope. Do you feel that?
Yeah. Absolutely. He's been great. I remember deciding just, that everything, it's easier just to, I remember telling the exact conversation, talking to a couple friends about it and saying, you know what, I might as well get to know him and like him. And, I have, it's just as easy to like somebody as it is to take a choice of being angry. So I remember making that decision. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna choose to be positive and get to know him and make a decision to like somebody versus looking for the bad. I remember the exact conversation I had when I made that decision, and it's been fine ever since. So, that,
Yeah, I didn't always know what was going on in your head because we would talk and
I didn't either, but
yeah, I mean, I was always trying to make things better for you during that kind of transition. And you seemed to be taking it in, but I wasn't sure how you were feeling. And the one thing, like from reading those self-help books and everything, it's sort of like, well, a son feels like he has to take that father's place and, like, I'll lock the doors and I'll take the garbage out and, and who's this guy coming in here. I mean, that's what in my head I was thinking. So I was understanding of that. And, so that
yeah,
that made sense. But I think that what I'm sensing though from you is that you really appreciated the fact that I put you first and that you weren't going to be just pushed aside. That you were my son and you were still only 16. It wasn't like you were an adult, like, well, you just have to accept this. I was letting you make the time schedule. And, but I
yeah,
feel like you're saying, because I didn't know at the time, sounds like at the time that you were feeling like you weren't being pushed aside. I hope that's true.
yeah. I would say that that's true. Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit. When did you leave Chicago?
I left Chicago, see, after my dad died, my mother remarried and we moved out to the suburbs. So I was entering the 6th grade. So it was a suburb of Chicago, out to Hillside, which is the wild open spaces. I had a bicycle and a lot more freedom, for than city dwelling. And then, well, and then like I said, I did go to 1 year of college in Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
in St. Paul. And then after that, I came back to Chicago, and that's when I went to the West Suburban School of Nursing in Oak Park, Illinois. So I was back to Chicago. Oh, and then I had met your father in Minnesota at that first year of college, and then he came and went to Wheaton or something, and then we ended up getting married after I got graduated from nurses training.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, we went to, I guess, Biloxi, Mississippi. That's where your sister was born.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got stationed in Hawaii. And that's where you were born.
How long were you in Hawaii?
About 4.5 years. So that was a really enjoyable time. I liked it there. It was very nice.
Where did you live in Hawaii?
We lived in Eva Beach, and I guess it's all built up now. They have luau's there and everything. It was just sort of out, quite a ways from Oahu at the time.
What do you remember most about Dad?
Well, I guess it would be his curiosity, and he was like a self-made person. If there was, he would be curious, and if he had a project, he would usually get 1,000,000 books and find out how to do it. The negative side to that was that he had so many projects. Well, also, he might have an idea, but because we didn't have the money for him to, like go out and do what he'd need, then he'd have to get into a project of building what he would need, and that could send him off into, one time it was into building a computer. So he had a lot of talents, and some of them never got fully developed, but he did have a lot of accomplishments. I think he was a good father, and he got a master's in fine arts from the Art Institute and San Francisco Art Institute, and he did a lot of good things. I just wish that he had gotten more recognition for his work, but that didn't happen. I sort of feel like, for myself too, as a tangent thing, is that I've never been an expert at anything. I have so many interests in that it's like I go down and this road, and I play tennis. I'm a pilot. I had a sailboat. I love photography, but I'm not, I'm not like the best photographer, and I just kind of have many things. I think that's okay, but sometimes I feel like in my next life, I'd like to see if I could be like really an expert in one thing.
What is it like to see your child be a father?
Pardon?
What is it like to see Dave become a father?
Oh, what is it like to see Dave become
As a father.
as a father?
To Emily.
What is it like to see David as a father? Well, I think David has always wanted to be a father and to have a family. It sort of comes natural to him to be there for his children. And right now, I think it's really stressful for him because he wants to be there for Emily, but in a lot of ways she pushes him away because she's like defining herself, and it's just very frustrating that he's that he loves her and he wants to help her, but I guess this is typical of a lot of teenagers, although I don't know, I think right now, this very day has been a very difficult day for David. for all of us because of Emily's teenage identity problems and thinking that she can do everything. She can be in the play, stay up till 1 o'clock, and still on the same day go to Stanford for her audition. She just was, I don't know. Did I sum it up? Or
Well, right now Emily is obviously struggling with a lot of things, sexuality being one of them, and she thinks she's struggling with whether or not she's gay or not. And my wife and I, Sonia and I, are struggling with how to deal with that and accept, love her and accept her. Do you have any suggestions on how to do that?
well, yeah. I mean, only suggestions are, like I was saying, you have to be a little bit of a horse whisperer. Um, you you can. It's when it gets really frustrating. I think I know what you mean. It's because I'm the parent, and I should have control of the situation, and I can make a rule that will solve everything. And I really do think that kids of all ages, they need to have boundaries, you know? And if they haven't been set early, then it's going to be harder to set them later. But it still needs to be done. And it can be done in a loving way. Hopefully it doesn't have to get to a situation, where, well, tough love, where, okay, you do that, these will be the consequences. And and then you have to deal with that as far as, preparing for the college thing and all of that. But I think the main thing is that she understands that boundaries are being set because you care about her, and that you're accepting of her as she's struggling with this identity problem, and that you offer her different opportunities to find her way, with counseling. I don't say counseling because you think, being gay is a problem. I think it's because she's sorting out feelings, and she needs all the help that she can get.
Yeah. If you could have have spend a day with anybody, past or present, who would it be, and why?
I'd like to spend a day with you, actually. It seems like life has been so busy that's one thing about this. We actually get 40 minutes here. I mean, it's like, have you noticed how life is just like boom, boom, boom? I didn't expect that in retirement. It's like there's something every day, and then there's preparation for whatever it is that's going on every day. I also wouldn't mind spending a day with Amelia Earhart. I think that would be very cool to have a day where you could just talk about personal stuff. And
What would you ask her?
oh, well, I'd ask her, did she really want to make all those trips everywhere? And what kind of flying did she really like to do? What did she have? What were her other, did she have any other aviation goals? That was to be her last flight and everything. And then, yeah, that would be interesting. Just talk about the kind of things you talk about when you just get to know a person, you know.
Mhm. Well, I wanted to talk to you about like when I was growing up, and the sports was a big part of my life growing up. Baseball, basketball, football, whatever was in season, we were playing in the neighborhood, and we were always trying to get a game together. And of course, inevitably, we would come up maybe a player short occasionally, and we called on you, and you were often the quarterback, the pitcher, whatever it was. You became that extra player, and I was 10 or 11 years old. At first, I didn't know what to think, but you were always willing to get in there and play with us, and you were actually a pretty good player. Our friends were like, wait a minute. They didn't know what to think at first, but then you were, dare I say, one of the guys.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. What do you remember about those times?
Yeah, I remember you telling me that, laughing, saying when you were short, you know, a player or something, they'd say, "Well, ask your mom."
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it was fun. And you know, I was a single child, so you know, I had to read books and just watch other families because I didn't always know, you know, what, you know, I had this thing about we always had to eat dinner together. You know, I probably got that. Well, we ate dinner, but there was just two of us because my dad had these weird hours, so usually just my mom and I. But anyway, so I had that, and then I thought, oh yeah, you know, boy, he's supposed to play catch and have this interaction, and your dad was usually in school. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
he was a very high achiever and everything. So, and I like sports, so it wasn't hard. It wasn't like it was a punishment or something. But I just felt it was important, you know, that somebody be out there, part
Yeah.
of that, and yeah, and it was fun actually. Did you notice me? Yeah.
Yes. You also took me to a lot of baseball games. I was a huge baseball fan growing up, and you supported that. And I remember specifically, you know, a few games that were huge
Oh
memories.
yeah.
And one of them, I think you got a foul ball.
Oh yes. Oh, who was that?
I think it was a
Stevie
Giants.
McCovey? No, it was a Giants. I got a Giants
It
ball.
was, I think it was
I thought it
Steve
was
Garvey
Steve Garvey, but he was
for
playing
the
on
Dodgers.
the Dodgers. I know, and you weren't there to see it but the ball just came down in that hard seat and it just spun, you know. And I just hesitated a second, but thankfully I reached for it right away because after that there were about 20 people came from nowhere, you know.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I saw you had a ball.
I know.
And
Without a glove, I got it.
you also took me to a game, I think it was in 1978, a famous game, which pretty much turned me into a Giants fan. I think it was just you and I. It was, again, Giants-Dodgers. And I don't know how you got tickets to that, but Mike Ivey had a grand slam and won the game. And I'll
Oh.
never forget that, being there.
Oh, I know. I still remember that. I didn't really know what was happening until, you know, all of a sudden. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, that was Mike Ivey that hit that, huh?
Yeah,
I was the first time I learned what a grand slam was.
yeah,
Bases loaded,
yeah.
bottom of the ninth. Willie McCovey was even there.
Yeah.
Everyone just jumped up in unison. It was such a thrill.
Yeah.
I mean, how often does that happen?
I actually remember, too, being in a concession line with you during that game. And it crossed my mind. You were having a conversation. First time it ever crossed my mind, these guys are hitting on my mom.
Oh.
And I was about 12. I mean, it was... You handled it very well.
Oh, good.
Yes.
But was that the game, the one that we went and we didn't have tickets. I don't know why I was lulled into believing that we could actually go there and get tickets. And there were a mob of people, and they said at a certain time they were going to open up this window or whatever. And so then I took you and your knapsack. There you were, your little sweaty brow, and your and with our hidden drinks down in the bottom. And well, you're a
Always.
kid. I had to have stuff for you. Well, we couldn't afford to buy those drinks anyway. So then I thought, then people just started moving like that. And I thought, well, I'm going to move too. So I wiggled in. When I got up to the counter, I said, I would like 2 tickets for my son and I don't care where they are. You know, it was like, I said, but we have to be together, and I don't care where they are. And she said, and she turned around and she looked at somebody and she like got permission or something, and gave me these 2 tickets that happened to be on the third base line. And we went down there. As we going to the seats, you know, we keep going down further and further. I thought, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I had never sat that close. Had you?
No.
And
Those were the days before, iPhones and earphones. Everyone would have, people would bring their radios, their transistor radios. So, and my binocular, I'm like half the time of the game, I'm looking at the announcers because those were the guys I like to,
I know you
where I
look
was
great
into.
with that microphone.
And
there.
and then hearing the game in the crowd on the radio during, you don't see that anymore. And
Yeah.
just hearing the guys talk in the stands about the game, and just, it was a beautiful day, and the seats were great.
So you were looking up there in the
Half the
booth
game,
and
my binoculars were on, the announcer's booth.
I don't want to say it was
Checking that.
cute, but I really loved it. The way you had those logbooks. So excited. Even when we watched games at home, you'd have that and you'd keep that score. I mean, I don't go to games and stuff anymore
Yeah.
because you made it so fun and alive. And remember how you used to put the banners up at the house and everything all around the edges of the ceiling, the wall and everything?
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was, but that game was great. And the peoples, they said sort of like, well, who are you? Because they were box seats or something.
Yeah.
And they just didn't come. It's sort of like, well, who are you? We're nobody. We just got these seats today. Oh, that was good though. We should go to a game.
Yeah.
Promise?
We will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe what your perfect day would look like now for you, and what it would feel like?
Oh, that would make me cry. But it seems like a simple thing to have all your children and grandchildren together in one place. It just seems like, even though everyone's in California, and that's the thing, when I was growing up, all your relatives, they came over on Sunday. Now everything's so mobile, but we don't have that. I mean, Gilroy, Richmond, Sacramento. Well, now Craig is in LA. But even that, it just seems like the times keep people separated. Everybody's working. Because they're working, their kids have to go to after school, before school, swim practice, blah, blah, blah practice. So the kids are gone. The parents are driving them everywhere. You can't get a Saturday. You can't get... So, you get the picture? My happiest day would be that everybody would actually be in the same place. The whole family. At least try to do that once a year. And that would be a great day once a year. Because, I mean, anyway, that I think that's it. But I could think of a lot of other things. So, and I've been
We can
making
do that.
I've been making a lot of happy days too, because I'm at home now. I think, oh, let me see. I could go play tennis, or go down with my friend to the movie, or I could go flying. But look at the house. I keep my house pretty good, but hey, this might be the last one, right? So I make a lot of, I think, good choices, and I do a lot of fun things.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite relative?
A favorite relative.
Okay. Well, think about that one. 'Cause
Well, I like, you know what? All of my relatives are favorite, because back to being a single child, I had my cousins were really. I grew up in an extended family, and so cousins were important. And I had one cousin that was 8. We were separated by 8 months, and we didn't get to see each other after, we moved to California and all. But all we had to do was get back together, and it was like we were never apart.
mm,
Unfortunately, she passed away a couple years ago.
hmm
But that would be Joni,
Oh yeah.
my cousin. That was really close.
Your partner in crime, I heard.
Yes, it's a good thing I moved out of the city, because we
Okay, so Mom, we're gonna have to wrap it up, but I want to thank you so much for doing this for me, and we'll continue this conversation, and
oh, so
make
I
it a
can't say
regular.
any more?
You can. Well, not today.
Not today?
No.
Oh, you didn't give me that fast roll thing. That's okay.
3, 2, 1, cut.
Okay.
Goodbye.